And we are live. Hi, Barney.
Hello.
First of all, thank you very much for accepting my
No
invitation.
problem. Yeah, no
It's,
problem.
it's a big honor. I'm a big fan of your music, but also about your, I don't know, for me, it's kind of, I really appreciate when a musician that, especially in the metal community, speak their mind, you know? Don't is not scared to talk about politics or I don't know veganism or sensitive
Yeah.
subject that because I feel that these days some people are really kind of scared to pick a side. You know, they're scared to
See the
lose.
see the problem is, like, that's a very human thing, I'm
Yeah,
human too, obviously, but
yeah,
it's like if the problem is if people don't speak as they think, then you tend to get a whole wide percentage of people who are just afraid to speak,
mm,
and the more that happens, the less people will be able to um, be critical of things that we should be critical of. You
yeah,
have to. I think I realize that not everybody's confident to do that
mm,
in some circumstances, but you know, you are deserving of a voice like anybody else on this earth. The president of anywhere is never more important than you, despite the fact that they think they are. You know what I mean? They're not.
yeah.
We're all human beings. Those are just artificially constructed systems, over
Sure.
200, 300 years. We are all human beings, and we have the right to say what we feel.
Yeah.
That's just
No.
it. It's that simple.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, and me, I try to do the same. The thing is that I think some artists are scared to pick a side or speak their mind to fear of losing fans or you
Yeah, I
know
don't give a
but
shit. I don't give a shit about that because,
yeah that's
yeah, I mean, it would be worse for me on a personal level to not say anything, and
yeah
it's not because I want to give it the big, oh, that's the guy that is special and all. I don't give a shit about that,
mm,
what matters to me is the ideas, because it's the end game for me.
sure
My end game is for both human beings and other sentient beings to be liberated, and okay, that I do that in a band context,
mm,
so I'm not just a person that stands on a street corner. I do it within an art, a form of art,
sure
um, but that shouldn't stop me. That shouldn't give me any less reasons to not say stuff,
mm,
I mean, yeah, I mean, I never quite got that, It's just, I think we've been conditioned to be nervous, about expressing ourselves
mm,
sometimes. And
yeah
I don't, yeah, I don't, yeah, for me, I don't care, basically,
yeah
it just doesn't,
no
yeah,
I think that's great, and I don't know, I think that's kind of have been lost, especially now with internet and people can they try to be very careful the what word pick. So that's what I love about you, about your music,
well,
about your lyrics, about
yeah,
your
and to be honest,
position.
yeah, to be honest, man, I think you mentioned in your earlier, when we first started speaking about picking sides.
Mm,
The thing is, I don't pick sides. I actually wish there weren't any sides.
mm,
I wish it was that everybody kind of understood for the things that drive me. That I would like to see achieved.
mm,
There shouldn't be sides in that conversation.
yeah.
It should be, like I say, the liberation of human beings, which to
Mm,
me is I know there are various things around it, but essentially it's a single point item.
mm,
That you either wish to see human beings like have a better future or you don't.
mm,
So I would suggest in that there is not there shouldn't be sides,
Sure.
or divisions. So I don't feel I need to pick a side per se, if that makes any sense.
No, I completely understand, because it's me, I'm the same,
Yeah.
But the problem is that, especially this day, people try to put you in certain boxes. Like, if you speak, for example, that I don't know about that healthcare should be a human right, for example.
Yeah, which I would say, which is one of the things that I believe.
They automatically tag you with communist, socialist.
I mean, that's just
stupid.
I mean, that reaction, I don't want to call it stupid, because I actually don't want to. I don't wish to demean people, but that it has no jumping from the point to hand to that accusation. It just doesn't. There isn't any connection in between.
Yeah, of course. For me, it's just the conditioning.
Healthcare essentially has been politicized. I understand that, but that doesn't mean, in essence, it's political. It's a human issue. It's a civil rights issue. It's not a political issue. And this is why I'm really insistent on that. As you rightly said, when you say, I could say to somebody, healthcare should be free, and they go, oh, you're a left winger. Well, yeah, I probably am, but that's not the point. This is not the point at hand. This is a civic issue. It's a human rights issue. That's what it is. So.
No, that's great. And for me, it's great that you have the courage to speak your mind, and that way I was so interested to invite you, because of course I know you have a new album that is really, really awesome, but I was really interesting to kind of pick your brain, understand how, because your career has been, I don't know how many years already you have been playing music.
31 now, actually.
Yeah,
I've actually been playing music longer than that, but Napalm Death, I've been in Napalm Death for just over 30 years now. So
because for me, the process of, for example, be an activist, I don't know if you like that word or not.
See, I would. There's two words you've said that I would pick up on. First, career, because the point is, this for me was never a career. Sure. Because the word career suggests an obligation. It suggests going to do work, because you have to. That Napalm Death was never about that for me. It was never that kind of static and stiff and all the rest of it. I consider Napalm to be a very flourishing, vibrant kind of art form. I don't see it as crafted in such a way that it's stiff and rigid and like a career path might be, so like I would just job. It's not for me. It never was. It never was that way. It's a living, breathing artistic entity. That's what it's always been. The second thing I would say, and which you started to already talk about, is activism. Now I understand why people say it, but to me, sometimes the way it's used, it feels like almost like a jacket that you put on, and you say, "Well, I'm an activist." You don't. It doesn't. You don't have to assign yourself a role like that. Activism is just doing what you can when you can. You don't have to deliberately go out and do it. If that makes any sense, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Because in real terms, speaking for me personally, I'm an activist all the time, 24 hours a day, because I never stop. The actual act of living, in considered ways, so being mindful of the environment, being mindful of the way other people are affected by your choices, that's a constant 24-hour thing, I think. So I don't see it like you take a jacket off a coat, off a coat hanger and say, right, now I've got my activist jacket on. It's not like that for me. It's,
for me, the sad thing, the kind of the sad thing is that, for me, the more natural thing is that all humans will be that way, you know.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah,
But
yeah,
the problem that they are not. So it's kind of rare. I
sure.
think that's why this concept of activism is like people that give a shit.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think most people do give a shit, but it's like, I think, see, there's a way to illustrate this. So there's a term, political correctness, which I'm sure you've heard many times,
Mm-hmm.
as a derogatory term,
Yeah.
again, and the reason that term exists, well, first of all, it came from a conservative radio
Of
DJ
course.
in America,
Yeah.
I hear people using it who are usually quite open and forward looking. They'll say, oh yeah, that's really politically correct. I don't think they quite understand the connotations to it, because it's used to demean people who think that the world should be different, that the
Yeah.
world should be run in positive ways for everybody, not just a few people. So when you try and express these ideas, there is, of course, a certain percentage of people who will say, oh, that's politically correct. It's fucking meaningless. It's a meaningless term. It's just a term to put down people
Yeah.
who are trying to make a difference. That's what it is.
Yes.
Because to suggest that, like, when you say, just as a simple example, oh, you shouldn't be transphobic, well, I would suggest that, again, that's a human term, that's pure basic humanity. Yet there is a certain percentage of people, oh, that you're just being politically correct. Well, what are you talking about? I'm just trying to show that I don't separate that person out as a human being because they have a different biological constitution to me, and why would I? So it's like, it's used as like almost a stick, to beat people
Yeah.
that want to make a
Yeah.
difference.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And it's the sad thing is kind of effective, especially in the United States, when people, they're trying to don't be tagged as that you're political. But the same as you, I don't give a shit. I speak my mind, and I encourage other people to speak their mind.
For sure. Even if the general opinion is different to yours, people should always speak their mind. I mean, even if it's somebody whose general views on things are completely different to mine, I would still say you should speak. Because if people don't speak, you can't have dialogue and discussion and conversation anymore. And it's really important that people do that, I think.
And what inspired you to become like that? Like you
it's a natural thing. It's just natural.
For example, when you were growing up, sometimes sometimes there are some bands, some music, some books that
where it really started was the fact that I grew up in Birmingham, which was an industrial city in the 1970s, and part of that was industrial action, against employers who were trying to undercut their workforce. This was going on across the country. So my dad was a trade union, sindicato, in Spanish, a trade union representative. So I grew up with that mindset, and I started to understand things from a very early age. I knew about the first thing that really came to me and made an impression, and a very negative one, of course, was the apartheid system in South Africa. I remember from a very early age thinking, why is it that some people in this world are treated completely separately and in a completely lesser sense in all aspects of life, just because of who they are, how they were born, what their sort of ethnic origin is. You know what I mean? It was, first of all, illogical to me, and secondly, just inhumane. So I understood that from a very early age. So then, as different situations came along, then I applied the same critique of those situations, you know.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I don't know, how was growing up in the, did you start as like in the punk scene or in the metal scene?
Well, I grew up, my dad was a hard rock, you know, loved hard rock music. So I used to sit and listen to my dad, to Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Bebop Deluxe, you know, Dwayne Eddy, you know, so rock and roll and heavy rock, hard rock, all the rest of it. That's how it started. And, you know, as I grew up, really, I liked rock music generally and some metal, but like Motorhead was my band. You know, I love them above any other band. You know, for me, but some bands were there and Motorhead was like up there. Do you know what I mean? So I went on. I mean, like, I liked metal, but I didn't like everything. I was very picky, you know, when it came to, there were some quite big bands that I really wasn't overly that bothered about, you know. So that went on for some years, but then eventually I heard GBH. GBH was actually the first. I mean, I'd heard all the 70s punk beforehand, you know, some of which I liked, but it was really when like GBH came along, the leather bristles, studs and acne album. I mean, to me,
no, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah,
because I know you're from England, so
yeah,
bands like classic like Sex Pistol or The Clash or never.
Yeah, I mean, I liked them, but they didn't leave a huge impression on me. It was because here's the thing: as I was into music, I was always looking for the more aggressive thing. You know?
Okay.
So then when GBH came along, I was like, fucking shit! It just sounded like 3 or 4 cavemen just playing on like cave walls, you know, with sticks.
Yeah, it was really
heavy. So it sounded great. So that was my first punk band, and then I heard like Discharge, Exploited, and then eventually, of course, because I was into human issues, you know, I heard Conflict and Crass and those bands, and from then on, really, both the music and the ideas like pushed me forward quite significantly. So that was really the thing. And then once I was 13 or 14, I started going into the Birmingham city centre, to the bars, the pubs. And eventually I met people who were involved in the punk scene in Birmingham. And that was where I discovered Napalm. You know, I was at the Mermaid pub in Birmingham. So
that's amazing. Because especially in the punk or hardcore scene, I think the lyrics are really important. Well, and metal too, but I don't know. So sometimes the metal is way more important than musicianship, or you know, the vibe of the song. Hardcore and punk, the lyrics are really, you know, like
well, it depends though, because don't forget there are many different strands of hardcore punk, in as much as there's many different strands of metal. You know, there's so many different things. So you know, there are some metal bands who are very very strong human ideas. You know, just because they're a metal band, it doesn't make them immune to that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Because at the end of the day, these scenes are just a microcosm of the world outside. You know, some people really are conscious of that stuff, and other people aren't. You know, it's the same as anything else, life in general.
So for you, Napalm Death start like a hardcore punk band, or how you will?
Well, it started as a hardcore punk band, you know, because it actually, Napalm was on Crass Records very early on. You know, one of the bullshit detector compilations. You know, Napalm was on Volume 4, I think it was. So that's where I found it. And to me, see, the thing is, Napalm always had a very interesting mix. You know, it was always rooted in the punk scene, but there was metal in there as well, and there was other things as well, noise stuff. And see, to me now, Napalm is actually, in that general description, Napalm is the same. It's not different. You know, people say, "Oh, Napalm's very different now." See, to me, in my opinion, it's not. You know what I mean? I mean, I didn't say anything earlier, but you called Napalm a metal band like several times, and to me, that's not yeah, and that's fine. I understand why people do it, but
No,
it's
it's just
like,
the people can understand, because it's the same like with politics. People
yeah,
need some reference,
yeah,
so they.
yeah,
If,
sure, but it only tells a
for me, of
part of
course, there's a lot of experimentation in your music.
yeah, but it's only a part of the story of Napalm Death. There's many,
Sure.
many other things going on. So you could equally call Napalm simply a noise band, or you could equally call Napalm, well, grindcore is actually probably the most apt description. And seeing as Mickey, the former drummer, came up with it, then it kind of fits best of all, because it came from Napalm Death, the grindcore
Yeah. No, but
attacks.
if we listen your discography, the discography of Napalm Death is really, you can find out many, many, many different influences, many different styles.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Of course, most of the people know just you're famous because of the grindcore, like the blast beat, like ta 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 ta.
Yeah,
but it's way more than that. Especially your last single, I love it. The video is great. A belly full of salt and spleen.
Yeah.
Do you can you explain a little about the concept of the video?
So, well, I mean, it connects obviously to the album. The album is generally about treatment of the other, dehumanized, marginalized people, who are treated who are increasingly marginalized, who start marginalized, and it just gets worse for them, and obviously one of those sets of people is migrating peoples, who are trying to attain a bit of dignity in their lives by escaping some pretty bad situations, and to treat them as like trash, and as almost like excrement, basically. I just find it to be, it's inhumane, I mean, without even putting my own personal emotions into it, I just think if the human race hasn't learned how to treat other human beings, in that respect, then we haven't learned anything at all. So the video itself uses images of people doing very dangerous voyages on unseaworthy boats, and it then cuts to scenes where like people are enjoying the typical holiday on the beach, of course not noticing these dead bodies have washed up on the beach from the boat.
I found it genius.
So it's that desensitization of people like you and me, the same as those very people that are playing on the beach, not noticing these tragic cases, these stories. These people have stories. These dead people. So that's effectively what we were doing. Trying to push that idea. This is your fellow human being who's lying dead in the sand. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And do you feel that in England there's a lot like an anti-immigrant sentiment?
There is everywhere. I think it would be quite accurate to say that, on every continent there is anti-refugee sentiment, So we have to. I think that narrative has to change. We have to. I think there's, in some ways, the whole idea of humanity as it should be needs to be reset. And we need to look at the world in a different way and understand that it shouldn't be that, just for argument's sake, 60% of the world has infinitely more opportunities and access to the basics of life than the rest of the 40% of the world. I mean, if this world is supposedly so advanced in its various its various methods of existence, then surely one of the fundamentals is to change that imbalance. You have to, I mean, there needs to my mind, to put it simply, because we haven't got long left, 2 minutes, but to put it simply, we need to redistribute wealth and resources in this world so it goes to more people, so we don't have poverty and suffering, and there is no need anymore for conflict because people aren't deprived, hopefully. And I mean, let's be honest, we already know there's enough work, there's enough food out there in storage in the world to feed the whole world, basically.
We throw away the half of what we produce.
Yeah, I mean, that's not even taking into account the waste. Without waste food, there's already enough in storage to feed everybody in the world, so why aren't we doing that? I mean, you think about it, it's scandalous,
Yeah. No, but of course for me, the perfect word to explain that is what you say at the beginning. It's like the conditioning,
Yeah.
that you are British, I'm French, I'm Chilean, everyone have hit their own invisible lines.
Yeah, but see, these are constructs that were made.
Yeah, of course.
200 and see, here's the thing. So we've been conditioned to think that those borders are there to protect us. They were never made for that purpose. They were made to protect the interests of the powerful and actually to protect also the resources that those powerful people owned. Because a landmass is a place of resources. And that's what it was. That's why these borders were drawn up in the first place. So people are, I think, I don't wish to patronize people, of course, but I think people really need to kind of stand back and look at what they believe is their patriotic right, in terms of their lands. This is not that whole construct around borders. I find to be just completely not the true picture. So.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well, I think you have just some minutes left, or
well, mate, we're done. It's half. I've got another interview coming in like right now.
I really thank you, and
no problem, man.
I wish you the best with the new album. It's
of course.
really amazing, and
thank you, man.
Keep doing your great work.
Yes, thanks, Ivan. I appreciate that, man.